Welcome to the Vault XL. Thank you for joining me. This is a three-part trial update. John Bassett is standing trial in Knoxville, Tennessee for the murder of Dashina Kyle. I will bring you that said information. First, during this live stream, the West couple, Jacqueline and Trezell West, the state and the defense has rested. The jury got instructions on how to deliberate and how to make a decision if this couple is indeed guilty on the said charges of murdering two small children that they adopted, Orrin and Orson West, receiving funds for the children while missing, and also filing a false report to emergency 911 services that the children were missing. And the last subject of the evening will be pertaining to Lori Vallow Daybell. The jury is currently deliberating on her fate of either innocent or guilty in the said charges of murdering her children, JJ, Tylee, husband Charles, and conspiring to the death of Tammy Daybell, the late wife of Chad Daybell. I will bring you that said update as well. Before I go into these trial updates, I want to bring you a little bit of breaking news that's happening in the U.S. E. Jean Carroll has filed a civil suit against Donald Trump. Very interesting information. There's always something pertaining to Mr. Trump. I believe he's been found guilty in this trial. They said the verdict is a victory. He wasn't charged with rape, but I believe it's violated her persons. I haven't gone into deep details on that subject matter, but I did post it to my community board. The Edwards family wants the Knoxville police chief to resign. Lisa Edwards was put into a paddy wagon not too long ago. An elderly white woman from, I believe, Washington State or Oregon, and she died in the back of that paddy wagon. It took them forever to get her inside. I think I have showed the video on my community post. She was telling them she couldn't breathe. Finally, she was able to get inside of that van, and she died in that van. So the chief and the officers are being deemed cruel to her death, causing her death. So it says here the Edwards family's attorney wants KPD chief to resign. And I posted that to my community board. It's very, very sick information. And also, Redonda Vaught, a nurse, was convicted in a 2017 drug-era death in Nashville, Tennessee. She's asking the state to reinstate her nursing license. And I say no. She does not need that license reinstated. I watched a bit of the trial pertaining to this lady, and something's off with her. And I believe there were conflicting statements that were acknowledged during her interrogation of the medicine, the dose that she gave the patient, the lethal dose. She had picked the wrong medicine out of the machine. And it's just a very odd story. And it's just something about it that's very strange to me. But those are my said updates. This nurse wants her license reinstated. A woman has won a civil suit against Mr. Trump. As I said, I have not gone into great details about that because I've been so busy with other things. But those are my said updates. I have them posted to my community board. We're going to start with John Bassett. He's been accused of killing Dashina Kyle. I've been searching for information about anything that happened in court today, and I couldn't find anything. So the latest was content uploaded from yesterday. Hello, Sammy P. Thank you for joining me. Hello, pretty baby elephant. How are you? Thank you for joining me. One moment, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Trying to get my audio constructed. First source is WATE 6 News. This is pertaining to John Bassett.
The jury's now set in the trial of an East Tennessee man accused of killing his ex-girlfriend. Sheena Kyle went missing and then was found dead almost 2 years ago. Now her former boyfriend, John Bassett, is on trial accused in her death. 6 News side reporter Dominic Webster walks us through the events leading up to this point.
On June 28th of 2021, Sheena Kyle was reported missing, sending shockwaves through her circle of friends and family.
Very difficult. It's like physically difficult. It's mentally, it's emotionally. It doesn't. It's like I'm not used to not hearing from her or not seeing her, not seeing a post. It's not like her.
Like she would literally answer the phone at any time of the day. It doesn't matter.
Police raided Bassett's home in early July of 21, arresting him on an outstanding warrant for violating probation. It wasn't until several months later that Sheena Kyle's body was found in an abandoned home on Sam Tillery Road in North Knoxville. Bassett was indicted on September 28 and formally charged with first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. He was held in custody on a $500,000 bond. At that time, Sheena's friends and family were relieved and glad that Bassett was caught.
Very happy with the outcome, that he is, justice was served, and the police did a good job, charging him. Like, I'm more than happy. Like that, it literally made me so happy. It made my day. I hope he gets life. I want him to get life or the death penalty, but because she didn't deserve this. She didn't deserve this.
Following that indictment, Knox County District Attorney General Sharm Allen filed a notice that her office intended on seeking life without parole for Bassett. Reporting in Knoxville, Dominic Webster, WAT6, on your side.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, jury selection already underway. The trial is now underway with the jury selected. We will keep you posted.
All right, WATE News is the source. So a jury has been set very quickly. They've got 12 members of a jury. I'm assuming alternates as well for John Bassett. His defense is claiming that she killed herself. So the only thing that he has done is dispose of the body in a toolbox at his late great-grandmother's abandoned house, which is the most asinine defense I've ever heard. I've never heard of anyone saying, well, okay, I broke into someone's house, found them dead, and I wrapped them up in plastic bags and duct tape and took them out of their house, obviously concealed in something, and then put them in a toolbox, however he got her out, however he concealed her, rented a truck, which leads people to believe he rented the truck just to dispose of her body. Truck puts him at that house from data gathered by the state, and then put her underneath a dead woman's house. Are you following the information? Now ask yourself, does that make any sense? The defense is claiming she was violent. She's damaged his property before, but yet you're the one breaking into her house and killing her. Oh, I left out the main part. Oh, besides breaking into her house, you shot her in the head, but you're claiming I found her that way. I found her dead, although I'm breaking in her house. I'm breaking her house because of what reason? So what is he going to say? That, well, no, I knocked on the door. She let me in. But I brought you testimony from two neighbors who still live in that complex that heard glass crashing, and their testimony that a neighbor who is now no longer living also heard glass crashing and some type of altercation inside of the apartment that fateful night when she goes missing, and body later found 3 months later under his dead great-grandmother's house. Let me bring you a little bit of information pertaining to the family members who have spoken on this murder charge. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Beganji, 129 Cash App. Stickers and chats are welcome during this live stream. This is a 3-part trial update pertaining to John Bassett, Lori Vallow Daybell, Jacqueline and Trezelle West. Thank you for joining me. Very, very disturbing information. That's the thing about the defense. They can paint a picture however they see fit, although 9 times out of 10, it's not true, the picture they're painting for their client. The allegations are not true, they're fraudulent. And that's the state's job, is to prove the allegations are not true and to prove what is the truth pertaining to the defendant, who they actually are. That is the burden of the state. Okay, everybody, let me get to this information pertaining to Mr. Bassett. And also, I just got information by WREG that the man accused of arranging young Dolph's murder has been released on bond. I may do a separate video about that as well. A lot of information coming out. Okay. I have to go back and find the content. WATE is the source. The jury is now set in the trial of an East Tennessee man accused of killing his ex-girlfriend. Deshina Kyle went missing and was then found dead almost 2 years ago. Now her former boyfriend, John Bassett, is on trial, accused of her death. June 28th of 2021, Deshina Kyle was reported missing, sending shockwaves through her circle of friends and family. This is difficult, mentally, physically difficult. I'm not used to not hearing from her or not seeing her posts. It's not like her, some of Kyle's close friends said. She would literally answer the phone at any time, any day, any time of day. It does not matter. And that is the same content that you just heard in the audio. Police raided Bassett's home in early July of 2021, arresting him on an outstanding warrant for violating probation. Excuse me. Several months later, Kyle's body was in an abandoned home on Sam Tillery Road in North Knoxville. And that's the same home where I took you all on a short excursion to show you the house where she was found in the crawl space. And I later go live from the apartment complex where she was murdered. Bassett was indicted in October and charged with first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. He was held in custody on a $500,000 bond. At that time, Kyle's friends and family were relieved and glad that Bassett was caught. Very happy with the outcome, that he is, justice is served. The police did a really good job, charging him. Like, I'm more than happy. It literally made my day. Chastity Erskine, a friend of Kyle, said, I hope he gets life. I want him to get life or death penalty because she didn't deserve this. She didn't deserve this. Once again, same information that I just played in audio. Following that indictment, Knox County District Attorney General Sharm Allen filed a notice at her office intended on seeking life without parole for Bassett. WATE News is the source. So in the audio and in the same article by the same news network, Channel 6 News, you hear her friends speaking publicly about how she would answer the phone if you called. And it was strange when they didn't see any social media posts from her. And naturally, her grandmother's the one that filed the missing persons report on the 28th of June, 2 years ago. And the last time the grandmother had spoken with her was on the 14th of June. So 2 weeks had went by and the grandmother had not heard from her grandchild. And I do believe the grandmother was living out west, I believe, Colorado state, if I'm not mistaken. So people get used to seeing you post things if you're known to post, such as this young lady here, Miss Kyle. And it became strange to family members and friends. So as I had heard information from the people I talked to at the apartment complex, she had a vehicle. She also had a dog. And I don't know the truth to the information about her pet or the car not being there. But those are things that people will start to question when, one, they don't hear from you, you're not answering, you're not posting. If they don't see your vehicle in the parking lot, people will become suspect. And it's sad that the 14th was the last time the grandmother heard from her. So now we will have to see who else she hadn't spoken to, and if it was around the same time, the 14th. Because if, let's just say, she died around that time, she was dead already and stored in a toolbox under the house while a missing persons report has been put out on her. So people are searching and calling, hoping, maybe she just took a hiatus and just didn't want to talk to anybody or be bothered. She was already dead. It's very disturbing news. This is why I keep telling people you cannot rely on social media posts as your go-to to hear from people. Because we're in an age now that everyone relies on social media. A lot of people, let's say, old school ways are out the door. No more stopping by people's homes. People don't have landlines anymore. So you're waiting on a Facebook post. And usually that's when people know something is not right, when they no longer see Facebook, TikTok, IG posts, Twitter. Oh, something must be wrong. They're not posting anymore. And usually that's the case. Possibly they're sick, hurt, deceased, incarcerated. It's something. Or they're in their own zone. Don't want to be bothered. This is why you have to try to check on people, call people. Call their direct number. You can't reach them on Messenger, Facebook Messenger. Call their number. Ask for their phone number. Hey, you mind if I have your phone number? If you're cool enough, your friends, family, you should have their phone number instead of just dialing them up on Facebook, because anything can happen to a cell phone. Messenger, Facebook could be, out of whack or whatever. And you're sitting here trying to dial somebody. They could be out of range where they can't get data to come through. You should always have a person's telephone number. And frankly, after a day or so of not reaching a person, I think it's best that you go by their house and check on them. And if they're living in a house or an apartment, they've got other bedroom windows, kitchen windows around the side of the house or apartment, walk around, look. That's when you'll realize something's not right if you see something that's off-putting, such as a broken window, car missing, or car's there and the person's not answering or opening the door. Prayers to the Kyle family, seeking justice for Deshina Kyle. And I agree with this young lady. He should get the death penalty. His defense team is claiming all he did was dump her, if worst case scenario. So which is it? He dumped her or he didn't? So he dumped a woman who allegedly killed herself. That makes no sense. And it's so vile and disrespectful to the dead and to the family and the friends and community to say she killed herself and I found her this way and then I just bagged her up like trash and dumped her underneath my great-grandmother's house. Who does that? We do have cases of people dumping people's bodies, such as drug overdoses. People don't want to be linked to a person that got high because they don't want to be possibly indicted for giving the person bad drugs, if indeed they're the one that gave them the drugs or getting high with them. So a lot of people have been thrown out like trash from drug overdoses. That has happened. But I've never heard of anybody saying, I went into someone's home illegally and found them already dead, and then I wrapped them up and threw them under my great-grandmother's house, abandoned house. That makes No sense. No sense whatsoever. And I think he should get what he gave to Sheena. He shot her in the head. He should be shot up. How about that? As I said, Idaho has the firing squad as a second method of death if indeed there's no medicine to administer via the needle. See, these people who commit these crimes, when they realize all measures have been exhausted to get them free or preserve their life instead of death, they whine and moan, not wanting the death penalty. But you didn't think about that when you killed the person or persons that you've been accused of killing. That what you did to them was cruel. No matter the method of death, the manner of death, asphyxiation, you shot them, you cut them up, you stabbed them, it's still death. And it wasn't your place to kill them. It wasn't your right to kill them. So why should your life be preserved? People filing and shuffling paperwork to the highest court to preserve your life when you had no regard for the person you killed. Why should people run around in circles to preserve your life? I mean, I want you all to think about that. Because some will say, well, the death penalty is just, it's the same. It's still murder. You're still killing this person, whoever administers the switch or the needle. Well, if you believe in scripture, God says it's wrong. But the laws of the land says it's right. So you're entitled to how you feel. And usually God's law is the law, if you believe in the scripture. But he also says an eye for an eye. He also tells us to turn the other cheek. So it depends on your interpretation. But he's guilty because you don't rent a truck if you're innocent. And the truck puts him at that house, that dead lady's house, discarding the body. So this seems more premeditated. And that's what I would like to know is if indeed he rented the truck ahead of time before going to her house, to break in her house. Because if he rented the truck after breaking into the house, hell, that's just as sinister. Because then that means the body had to be where while you're renting the truck. So if he didn't rent the truck that night he went and broke in, where was her body before getting up the next morning, afternoon, or whenever to rent the truck? So you have to pay attention to the details. So I look forward to hearing this information in court. From the text messages sent between the two, any responses on her part, what was said to her. The state is alleging that he thought she was pregnant. And they have Google searches of him inquiring about what happens to a person shot that's pregnant. Well, if they're dead, they're dead. So I think naturally, if they're dead, the infant would be dead, depending on, the embryo or how far along the person was pregnant. And they also have information that she was not pregnant. So where he got that information from, I don't know. Do not know if Miss Kyle told him that, or maybe she thought she was pregnant and he decided he didn't want a baby. But this creature is obviously violent. He has put his hands on her before in the past. And they obviously met as young people. She was 26 years of age at the time of death. So she had been dating him probably off and on for years. Sadly, she was dating the wrong person. And my theory is if it was not Sheena, it would have been somebody else's child that he would have done the same thing to. Because anyone that would murder a person because they think they're pregnant, they would murder them for any reason. Because that's not a reason to kill somebody. Even if you're upset at them, jealous, envious, they don't want you back, they don't want to date you, that's not a reason to kill them. The relationship isn't working, that's not a reason to kill them. Fraud, greed is not a reason. But that's the point. People have various reasons for murdering people, as you'll see in the testaments I'm going to bring to these other trials. People killing children. Each had their own reason for why they murdered their child. because you have sick people out here and they're just evil. Once again, prayers to the Kyle family. When I get an update to the proceedings in court, I will bring you that said information. Subject matter number 2. Trezell and Jacqueline West. One moment. Thank you all so much for joining me. 23 ABC is the source. Defense rests in West trial closing arguments expected next week. After reviewing recorded interviews between Trezell and Jacqueline West's eldest son and a social worker, Dr. Susan Napolitano said she believed the child had been questioned improperly in ways that could have resulted in false memories and allegations. And I brought you this information earlier. The defense rested its case on Wednesday, and Napolitano was called to offer her expert analysis as a child psychologist and forensic interviewer. She conducted over 100 child forensic interviews and testified in dozens of criminal and civil cases. And once again, I brought you this information earlier. She feels as if some of the questionings were improper by the social worker who interviewed them. Now, this woman is being paid $35,000 to $42,000 for her testimony. The state has also found information that she was sued by a client, but it was dismissed by a judge that he found no biasness in that said case. She did not review all of the evidence, a 2,000-word report on the case, and the state asked her had she got all this information ready. She said no. They also requested her notes, and she said she had no information, that they wanted her notes, but he said he'd like to have them after court convened. This case rests on the testimony of a 10-year-old child at that time. He is now 12. So it's going to be up to 12 members of a jury to decide, did this child tell the truth? The defense is stating that the child gave conflicting statements initially during his interrogation and versus what he has revealed in court. And also, there's conflicting stories between his testimony, the other boys' testimony, and we also have the family giving testimony that they didn't see the children. So my thing is this. Rather, some of the information is conflicting between the children, when the children got to Cal City or not. You can't ignore his own parents testifying, the West, saying they didn't see the children at some point before December 2020. So if they didn't see the kids and they thought the children were at Jacqueline's mom's house, why are you trying to downplay and throw the children under the bus as they don't know what they're talking about? Well, I do believe that's why they moved, because that child was murdered in Bakersfield. I honestly believe that. That was the whole purpose of the move to Cal City, because they were adamant in trying to get that money for that house. And you had a realtor speak to a YouTuber, Chris Thorns, or the lady who was selling the house, rather, how much wrangling she did with them to buy the house, which I thought was very peculiar. Because usually when you realize a person doesn't have the money, then you go on to the next person and see if they have cash and or can get a bank loan. You don't keep wrangling with a person for 4 or 5 months, 6 months, and you're trying to sell your house. You're trying to move on with your life. And I found that behavior strange from the lady selling the house. And of course, a lot of oddities came out about her too during this investigation. Different aliases, just a lot of suspect behavior from a lot of people involved in the storyline, people that lived on the street. A lot of their names came back to living at that same Casa Loma apartment, which I thought was very strange. the odds of several people living in houses on that same street where the West bought this house also resided at Casa Loma. Just a lot of odd details pertaining to the neighbors, their backgrounds, being associated with the same cities. Very peculiar. Could be coincidence. I don't know. But I found it strange at that time. And that's expected when you are dealing with true crime, that you end up hearing other odd and crazy stories pertaining to people who are linked in accidentally into the storyline. I'm going to bring you audio pertaining to the West case. Thank you for joining me. As I said, the state and the defense has rested, and it will be up to 12 members of a jury to decide if these two murdered their children, and if the testimony is believable by what the child and the other children have said pertaining to when they last saw each child. You have to admit it's peculiar for two children to go missing, rather at the same time or different times. So it's still suspect if the boys were killed the same day. If the boys were killed a month apart, 2 weeks apart, it's still suspect. Because the first thing you're going to ask is why? Why those two children? What did they do to deserve death versus the other 4 children? They have 2 biological children and 2 other adopted children. So you want us to believe that the other 4 children were better and better behaving than these 2 baby boys. So what was so terrible about these 2 kids that they deserve death? And let's say that one died accidentally, fell, hurt himself. Just say it was an accident, child number 1. Well, then how did the second child get missing? They're trying to allege that possibly a pedophile or a sadist kidnapped the children wandered off, or the biological family took the children. But there's no surveillance showing anyone going around the house, hanging near the house, no videos of the children wandering off, and no information that anyone from the biological family kidnapped the kids. And I also just learned here the other day, yesterday, I believe, Jacqueline testified that a TT related to the kids, she left the kids with her, but then stopped letting her keep the kids. But yet we don't have a testimony from a TT in court. And we don't have a verification of a TT. Just something made up by Jacqueline to try to take the heat off of she and Trezell, my opinion. Because I think by now there would have been some verification of any other family member or outside babysitter to verify. And this sounds so typical and remnant of Casey Anthony with Zanny the nanny. Zanny the nanny lived over here. She's this tall, this height, blah, blah, blah. But when you go look for her, she doesn't exist. You check the apartment records, no name, no description of anyone that mirrors who the person is identifying as the babysitter. So could she even tell the court where TT lived? Full name, address, height, weight, description? Probably not, because she doesn't exist. And when you can verify that a person is lying and making up imaginary people, you have your answer right there to the truth. Whether you got different statements from the children or not, you have their own family saying, I haven't seen the kids. So that has as much weight as the children not seeing the kids. His parents have attested they didn't see the kids. Fall to winter 2020. So why is all the scrutiny coming down on a 10-year-old boy? And why would a 10-year-old lie about seeing a kid not breathing, cold to the touch? I don't think he made that up. One moment, please.
Jacqueline West, accused of killing their two adopted boys months before reporting them missing, is entering its final stage. Judge Charles Bremer this afternoon read the jury their instructions after the defense rested its case yesterday. Among those instructions, the jury must consider whether a witness knows someone in the case and has a certain bias and whether they made inconsistent statements. Earlier this week, we learned the West's eldest child gave conflicting statements about Orrin and Orson whereabouts in December of 2020. Closing arguments are scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. And a reminder, KGET.com court reporter Jason Gutowski is providing daily updates from the courtroom on our KGET Twitter account. You can also find more on this week's testimony and the events leading up to it on our website, KGET.com.
All right. KGET News is the source, everybody. So, as you hear in this audio, 12 members of a jury have to decide if the person that testified, they're basically speaking about the boy child, the 10-year-old, at that time he's now 12, if he gave conflicting statements, half-truths, or lies in the case, implicating his parents as the killers of these children. Seeing the kids, not seeing the kids, not remembering. Seeing one look sick, look dead. Parents told him that the child was dead. What do we do? Child disappears. Move to Cal City. The second child disappears. So the defense wants you to say, well, all that testimony you heard are lies. He doesn't really remember. The social worker put false thoughts in his head, coerced him to say certain things in agreement with his other brothers. And naturally, the other children would have been smaller at the time, being interrogated by a social worker and the police. And maybe some of the tactics weren't officially, let's say, the best tactics used. But they're trying to get to the truth. To what happened to the children. Last time these kids saw the children. And I think if a child, more than one, says, I haven't seen them for a while, then you just use deduction. Because a while can mean a week or more. A while doesn't really have a stipulation on it. Grown people ask people, have you seen John or have you seen Mary? Well, it's been a while. And then the person may ask, well, what's a while? Oh, a week, 2, 3 months, 6 months. So you have to go back in and ask again, what do you mean by a while? When you're talking to small children, they may not be able to tell you what a while means. Just that I haven't seen them. But a 10-year-old will possibly have a better memory than you trying to ask that question from a 3 or a 4-year-old, 6-year-old. And he's probably savvy enough to where he could have told the investigators and social worker, I haven't seen them in months, because we don't know how savvy and articulated this child was at that time. And I understand that's the same perception of smaller children. If you don't know their aptitude, you have to tread lightly in your questioning until you get a better understanding of the child's disposition, let's say, if he or she can understand what you're asking, the level of comprehension. So then you tread lightly into your questioning once you realize how they can receive the information. So perhaps this child seemed like he was coherent to understand the questioning. But then who's to say, as I said, he changed up in testimony now because he misses his family. He wants to be reunited. He doesn't want to get his parents in trouble. He's facing them in court. That's a lot for a child to deal with, because I'm sure he watches TV, watches the internet. He's heard horrible stories about his parents in the news being accused of killing his children. They're also been accused of abuse, fraud, filing a false report, 911 services. I'm sure by 12 years old, he's heard a lot about his parents. And then who knows them better than he? He's lived with them. But naturally, his perception could be different than the other children, because how you're treated, you will have a different perception. If he was treated highly well, he won't have the same perception of his parents as the other children that were allegedly abused by them. And you got testimony from a 16-year-old former foster child saying Jacqueline was very stern in her method of quieting children by restraining them with her legs and her elbow to the neck. And I don't think that was made up. So now you have to say what? That child came into court and he lied as well? And the fact that in the interview process early on, somebody had to have told detectives that the children bled from getting a beating. Somebody's child got beat severely. Where would they get that from? The police don't know them. They don't know them from a can of paint. So that means somebody had to have given that information. So to say, oh, well, you're trying to coerce the children to agree with another child that said that. Well, I think they're asking, have you seen this before? Have you seen another child beat severely to where they bled? And you're not going to know the answer until you ask. But as I said, I wasn't there for all the questioning of the children in the beginning. Naturally, that's private. But this is why they should have cameras in the court and people get to see the testimony from each person, Zoom calls, video calls, so you can get a better understanding than having it repeated back to you from news reporters. I believe they were stern with the children. And even if it was one parent more dominant than the other in the physical abuse, another parent had to have knowledge of it because both of these people did not hold down 40-hour jobs. So they knew of each other's comings and goings and how they treated the children. So whether one was doing the beating, the restraining, chokeholds, the other one had to have known because, as I said, they did not have employment. Their employment was the DHS hustle by bringing in children and getting paid a nice monthly fee. And their total fee for the children was $4,000 a month. So that would lead one to believe that this was their hustle and their means of survival out there in the damn desert. And they really didn't care about anybody's child, not even their own, because you can't say you care more for your children, but you're beating up somebody else's damn baby that you took in to raise as your own and then legally adopted. So how long do you think you're just going to be able to keep the kids around and you don't care for them? That's why they're dead. That's why they're gone. Anybody with sense can see straight through this facade. You took in kids for the money, adopted them, state still paid you a stipend because they were fostered first, then adopted. They probably was still in your pocket coming around to visit because I don't believe the state's going to keep paying you money every month and not still visit. They're going to want to see the children. You got the verified schooling records, documentation of going to the doctor, all of that. That's going to be a criteria through the state. If they're giving you any type of fund for medical expenses, food stamps, so on and so forth, you couldn't produce them. That is why you reported them missing in December 2020. Somebody came a-looking, somebody came a-knocking. Somebody was asking to see the children, either through medical visit or physical visits from the state. I truly believe this is why they reported those kids missing. Because so long as they were living out there in the desert, they weren't fooling with a lot of people, friends and family. Nobody's coming out to the house. Then nobody knew their business to inquire about the children. But somebody had to be inquiring, and this is why they put in that false report days before Christmas. I believe that. The only person that hasn't told us this to verify it as truth is the state, because they rarely give out information on children cases. It's all privy. But that's who should have been testifying. Department of Human Services. Any improprieties of them as foster parents. Any improprieties between them and the children, allegations of abuse. And there had to be something, because that foster child didn't just pop up out of the Cabbage Patch. Somebody went and found him because he lived with them and he had knowledge of her strong arming and pressing her legs against children to restrain them. So there's something in the books with DHS that's negative pertaining to this family. The sad part is that they took in foster children, God only knows how many, and were able to adopt 4 children, and 2 are missing and presumed dead. And I thought there would be more evidence from the state linking these 2 to the children, such as DNA, something left behind, some type of matter from the children, hair, blood, something. But that was not introduced into court. So basically, this case is relied upon one child's testimony that's 12 years old, what he saw and didn't see and hear back in 2020. And it's up to 12 members of the jury to decide if they believe that child. But as I said, his family members have said the same, even if some of the information is conflicting from 2020 or 2021 up until now. His own parents said they haven't seen the children. So that's enough for me. The video showing them going in the van with 4 kids. You can blow it up 1,000 times and pay someone to say, I see something different. There weren't 6 kids getting in that van, and there weren't 2 returning. And naturally, Miss Martinez was investigated by police to say she didn't have the kids. So where the hell are they? His parents didn't see them. The kids didn't see the kids. Her mother didn't have the kids. Then where the hell are the children? So don't try to put all the blame on one kid that he don't know what he's talking about. He was coerced in his testimony. No, everybody's saying the same damn thing. Ain't nobody seen the kids in months, point blank. They filed a report that those kids were missing for a reason. And I believe it's the state of California was coming to see the children, verify the children, check on the children. Why not? The state's paying for them. Why not? They didn't move to that desert to get away from anything. And the fact that these lawyers are trying to play them up to be some happy couple, taking in kids, loving kids. She already told the interrogator in the beginning she didn't care for the adopted children like she cared for her own. What fool would tell that and they have 2 missing children? Because that's the whole point, that a person cannot hide their true feelings. At some point, they're going to slip up, and she did. No, I don't care for them like I care for my own. Well, then why the hell did you adopt them? Why the hell did you foster them? Why the hell do you have anybody's kid in your house? And if you are bold enough to choke hold a kid, confine a kid with your legs on top of theirs, you don't have no reason to be breathing any children, taking care of your own biological children, because you are cruel. And if you can beat a baby, you can beat your own biological children, because you are the same person. And people kill me thinking, oh, it's because of the kid. They're wayward. They're bad. They're bad kids. I've heard this BS since I've been on top of this dirt. You favoring one kid over the other. You're still cruel. You don't like this kid's parents, so you don't like the kid. Well, that's your problem. You're the one procreated. It's not your kid's fault that they have a deadbeat mother or a deadbeat dad, or you two didn't get along, the relationship didn't work. Now you're mad at your damn kid. So now you're taking your frustrations out on your child because you and the daddy or mommy don't get along. Well, that's not the kid's fault. And a lot of people have that story to tell, that they're a product of jacked up parents with jacked up ideologies and relationships. So then they take the brunt of being mistreated because their mommy and daddy don't get along. This is why people don't need to procreate, because you can't choose your children over your other kids. You're choosing them over skin color. You're choosing them because one's brighter, smarter, taller, faster, more athletic. Oh, this is my dumb kid. That's my smart kid. That's my prettier son. That's my ugly son. You don't talk like that about kids, because in the end, it's flesh and flesh. You procreated them. And you treat all your children the same. Short, tall, fat, dark, light, hair, no hair, curly, straight. Those are your children. And none of us asked to be here. But that is the sad tale in this world that people do treat their children differently. And many people will not admit that they treat their children differently. And let me tell you something. If you can treat your own damn kids differently and they all came from the same womb, you would definitely treat children different that fostered and adoptive. That's a myth. Oh, they took them in because they care about kids. They love kids. And then you start hearing whack-ass stories about children being abused sexually, mentally, physically. But nobody knew the truth because everybody's walking around lying, making people think these Christian people really care about kids. They don't give a damn. They just found an easy way to get money without having to hold down a 9 to 5 point blank. The hustle is real with the state, honey. And you can't get mad at the state because if the people pass the background, that's all you got. You don't know the mental state of the people wanting these children. You don't know that deep down inside they're vengeful, they're evil. How would you know that? Nobody comes out and say, yeah, when you give me this kid, I'm going to beat him to death. I'm going to hide him in the closet. I'm going to put a lock on the refrigerator. I'm not going to feed him. Who the hell is going to tell you that? Nobody. It's a hustle. And sadly, the children pay the price. And it's a sad tale of children dying at 3 and 4, removed from their parent as infants to later die as toddlers. That's a cruel life. And as I said in my commentary earlier, you don't know what it's like if you've never been in state's custody. You have no idea what children go through going from house to house, family to family. What kind of identity can you have if every other year you're sleeping in somebody else's damn house? Different height, different religions, different races, different ideologies. You have no identity, no sense of self. Because just as quick as you're trying to adjust and get comfortable, they find something wrong with you, then poof, you're gone. Now you're in somebody else's house. Now the cycle starts all over. So you have to pray for our children in general, and especially pray for our children in state's custody because they have a tough time. They're coming from all different backgrounds, walks of life, genetic issues, products of people who've used narcotics, alcoholism. The children may have some type of deficiency, and now they're trying to navigate in a house with strangers. It's a cruel way of living. It's a very cruel way to live, going from home to home. And these were babies. Toddlers, those are babies. And they didn't ask to come here. They didn't choose their biological mother and father, their family dynamic. They didn't choose the situation of being taken by the state. They didn't choose that. And they didn't choose the West family. And as I have said before pertaining to those boys, they didn't have a chance. And I think it's obvious. Their journey here was short. And sadly, other children's journeys are just as short because they're born to the wrong people and then they're taken in by the wrong people. So as I said in my last commentary, if you're not going to do right by your children, stop procreating. Use birth control. Stop expecting the state to jump in and take your kids. Family members are taking your children. You need to stop having sex unprotected and then get knocked up and do whatever you want while the child is in the womb. And then they come out, you're still doing what you want and not doing right by your kid. And then you want to start cussing and fussing at the world when somebody makes a call to DHS and your children are removed. No, that's your personal problem. That's not a kid problem. That's not they're meddling in my business. You can't get high and drunk while pregnant. You can't get high and drunk while having the children here. You can't mistreat your kid, beat up your kid, talk down to your kid, leave your kid with every Tom, Dick, and Harry. If you're not going to do right, don't procreate. Justice for the boys. I do believe these two murdered these children for whatever reason. I do believe they were cruel to the children. I believe they were cruel to other people's children that they fostered. And my thing is, if they mistreated these two, they 9 times out of 10 mistreated the other adoptive children. And we've already had testimony from a former child who's 16 years of age. I don't believe he lied. And what would be even more sad is if these children still want to be with their biological parents. But that's the thing about children. They are resilient and they're also forgiving. And this boy probably misses his parents because they are all he knows. But look how cruel karma can be. The same system that they abused the children to get money, their own biological children ended up in the state's care. Imagine that. You see, God don't like ugly. They forfeit their own children to abuse these little boys. So karma came home. An eye for an eye. You abuse these children, the state will take your children. And now you have to sit and wonder if somebody's doing the same to your children that you did to these little boys. Now imagine that. Once again, court will resume on Tuesday pertaining to Jacqueline and Trezell West. We will wait to see what the jury decides in that case. And once again, jury has been set in the John Bassett trial. He's standing trial here in Knoxville, Tennessee for the murder of Sheena Kyle. I will bring you an update tomorrow pertaining to his trial. The last part of this live is pertaining to Lori Vallow Daybell. The jury has the case now. And 12 members of the jury will decide the fate of Lori Vallow Daybell if indeed she conspired to kill Tammy Daybell, murder her husband and her 2 children. This is the last topic for this live stream. Thank you so much for joining me. Jury deliberating in Lori Vallow Daybell murder. This was uploaded 2 hours ago by Court TV. One moment, please.
Gotcha. How long have you guys lived here? How long have you lived here?
Like 3 weeks.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay.
That's why the neighbors took us.
Gotcha.
Like, hi, neighbor, sorry.
That video, the jury in this case did not see. That is Lori Vallow at the time, moments after Charles, her husband, was shot and killed by her brother. Giggling, smiling, making a joke, flirting. Unreal. Unreal. Now, they heard a description of it, but they didn't see the actual video. I'm going to show you something else that this jury did not see, which is video of Charles Vallow himself in January of 2019 pleading for some help, knowing that something was wrong with Lori and seemingly indicating that his life was in danger. Take a listen.
She's lost her mind. I don't know how else to say it. We're LDS. She thinks she's a resurrected being and a God and member of the 144,000. She's come. Jesus is coming next year.
And she
threatened me, murder me, kill me.
She threatened to murder you?
Yes. And she said,
how did she do that?
My bishop right there is in the car. He was on the phone with me today when she said, "I will have you destroyed." That's what she said there.
Okay, that's not a threat to kill you.
Yesterday was a threat to kill me.
Okay. What did she say yesterday?
She said, "You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers."
What's going on? Why is she here and you're not here, or are you staying here with her?
Long story. She's had kind of a drug personality. She thinks you're LDS?
Yes.
She thinks she's married to Coral now in the past.
You think she's what?
We're married to Coral now, on top of the temple.
Angel.
You see, he's speaking to a police officer, 2 of them, and one of the females is also from the same religion. And I don't think they took him serious, Charles. Charles stayed too long in this relationship with Lori. He held on too long. He knew something was going to happen the day he went over to that house. He should not have gone. That's why you have to be careful what you claim. Now, I don't know anything about the Book of Mormon. I just know about the Bible. And I know in the Bible, it's in Psalms. It says, speak it and it shall be so. You have to be very careful what you claim on your tongue. Because a lot of times we as people joke about things. We joke about other people. Girl, he gonna do something to you. Girl, that's gonna happen. Girl, you're gonna lose your job. And before you know it, it happens. He sat there and told Adam, her brother, they're up to something, her and Alex. Well, they were. And you walked right into the lion's den and walked into the trap and died. And they walked right over you, waited 40 minutes before calling 911, make sure you were fully dead. This man is dead. And he claimed it. And he's sitting here on these 911 calls trying to explain what she said, didn't say. You got the cops saying, well, that doesn't mean that she's trying to kill you, but she said she's going to destroy you. Then he has to go in and say, well, she said it again yesterday. He's sitting here trying to tell him he's got a witness. See, it wasn't good enough. Now imagine the people going back, reliving this moment, watching the audio and saying, damn, he was trying to tell me something, but I didn't believe him. And they'll probably try to scoot it under the rug like, well, you know, there's only so much we can do with the law. I didn't really think she was going to kill him. Well, how would you know that? You don't know her and you don't know him. And he's sitting there telling you she's broke from reality. She thinks she's dating somebody from the religious book. And even this cop lady is saying, oh, yeah, it's an angel, blah, blah, blah. And that lady knew Lori wasn't married to no angel. Well, she wasn't married to no damn body. But this man here, and he just kept going back in, back in, back in. They read his text in court. He's pleading, pleading, pleading. She's ignoring him, ran off. He should have left her alone. Got his son. When she ran off, he should have filed for papers and left her. He could have filed for abandonment and kept it moving. And it wouldn't matter if they ever found her to serve her papers. I would have had my child and I would have been gone. And I would not have been worried about her trying to contact him or try to see JJ again. I would have said, when you left this marriage, you ran off to Hawaii or over here, Arizona, I'm done with you. I'm done with you. And the only way I would have tried to meet with her would be to set her up just to serve her those damn divorce papers. He held on too long. And it's not to blame him, but he saw the signs that something was wrong with her. And you have him saying this to these police officers. And then months later, or however long it was before, you look up, he's dead. This woman has been gone. Because how do you just wake up and kill a 16-year-old who's almost grown? That's strange to me. So you have to decide, was this woman crazy, mentally ill, already crazy beforehand, before she met Chad Daybell? Or she knew what she was doing, and she's just innately evil. She and Chad Daybell, and her brother, and her niece, and that Sulima character. Yeah, I'm throwing them all in there. I'm going to bring you some very interesting information that some of you may not know about pertaining to closing arguments from the defense. It may shock you. It's probably what most of you have been waiting for, and it's a question I've asked on my community board, and you're going to get the answer before this live stream is over.
Angel, LDS.
They don't let me in there.
Probation, and she knows when the second coming is happening next year, so does the prophet.
Okay.
He knows and she knows about it. She meets with following on Jesus Christ, face to the temple every day. I've tried to support her as much as I could, but it's gotten really, really bad lately. She's had a break. She says, I'm Nick Schneider. I've taken over Charles's body, and Charles has been killed. I'm going to kill you. You're going to be murdered today or tomorrow. I can do it, or I could get my priest to put my power. She does priesthood blessing. She does.
So who's Nick Schneider? Okay.
That's who I'm supposed to be.
Find Peter Parker.
How sad is that? Sorry, intermission. Imagine sitting here telling police she's giving me these different names. She's breaking from reality. She thinks she's married to this character from the Book of Mormon, blah, blah, blah. And they're probably looking at him like he's damn crazy. And in the end, like I just said, all this blabbering on and on of these damn cops, this man is dead. These children are dead because of these ideologies that she believed in, either on her own or with the coercion from Chad Daybell, however you want to word it. But in the end, these people are dead and they're not coming back. This is why you have to pay attention to details. Because, see, I keep telling people, when you keep hearing the same type of talk from people, behavior, you need to start taking them seriously. This is why many people do end up dead, because they don't believe the person is going to hurt them. Obviously, they don't, because they keep staying with them. And I hate hearing these stories after the fact. Oh, she wrote in her diary, he's going to kill her. Oh, if I come up missing, my husband did it. My ex-boyfriend did it. My boyfriend did it. Why in the world would you write that on paper and still stay with the person? And people question that. Well, if you thought they were going to kill you, you're leaving a diary and a journal. Why don't you just leave? Save yourself. That's creepy as hell to be writing in a journal. I think they're plotting my murder. I think they're secretly poisoning me. She's poisoning me. He's poisoning me. When you could just walk out and don't tell anybody where you're going to preserve your life. You don't stay with a person that you think is trying to kill you. Whether they're saying it or physically hurting you and saying it. Lori was showing him the signs she was gone from reality. He should have left her be. He should have left her. Taken his son and left. And prayed for Tylee. Because in the end, even if he had taken his son, we still don't have any notion that Tylee would not have ended up in the same fate. Because the belief system was already put in motion. It's very scary.
She's not being tried for the murder of Charles in this case because that happened in Arizona. That trial's coming up later, but still extremely revealing of everything that's going on inside her mind. Let's bring in our guest. We've got a great panel tonight. In Chicago, Illinois, founder of Victims News Online, former private investigator Erica Morse is with us. In New Brunswick, New Jersey, the two hosts of Surviving the Survivor podcast, Joel and Carmela Waldman, are with us. Great to see you both. In San Antonio, Texas, forensic psychologist John Delatorre is with us. And finally, in Idaho Falls, Idaho, reporter for the East Idaho News, Caitlin Hart is with us. All right, Caitlin, I'll start with you. East Idaho News. This stuff that this jury hasn't seen paints to me, an even more complete picture, because Charles is in it and he realizes that there is something really wrong with Lori.
It does, for sure. And I've seen these before, and every time it's just as heartbreaking. I mean, you can tell he did everything in his power to try and get some help. But what is the most important part to realize about this is Lori is still charged with Charles's murder in Arizona. So after this trial for Tammy and JJ and Tylee, she still has to go to Arizona and be tried for Charles's murder. So that is something I imagine they will show the jury in that case instead of this one.
John Delatorre, let me ask you about Charles. You know, this is his wife, and he knows there's something terribly wrong, and he's...
Let's talk about that for just a second. In a lot of trials, such as this one, certain things are not admitted into court as to be prejudicial because they'll say, oh, it doesn't have any bearing on this case. But it does have bearing on the case. She's accused of conspiring to kill Tammy and kill her 2 children. Her other relative, which would have been her husband at the time, he's ended up dead by her brother. It was a setup. And all that should have been brought in. All these testimonies should have been brought in. Testimony from her brother. I don't know. I doubt that was even brought in. The brother's recording with the detective that he believes that Charles was set up by Alex and Lori. All of that is relevant. It shows a pattern. All these people are related to this lady, and they are now dead. There's a pattern. First the husband, then Chad's wife, then her children. It's all a pattern. Or the children, then Tammy, however the order. And then at the end of the year, her brother, the henchman, he's dead. Allegedly from heart issues. What are the odds? But the only two standing are Lori and Chad. Stay woke now. But obviously, this information cannot be brought into court pertaining to the death of Charles, because originally it was deemed self-defense. But when all these people started coming up missing, such as the children, and then she married Chad after his wife passed, then that shooting of Brandon in the driveway, the dots started to get connected from state to state. So each law enforcement office is contacting the next to say, hey, we need to talk to you about this. This is what we got over here. And that's when the doors started opening up to trying to find the children, exhuming Tammy's body, because that's the old saying, one thing begets another. And that's how the house of cards fell for Lori and Chad Daybell. They were not smart.
Terribly wrong, and he's walking around and it almost like his hands are tied, like he can't do anything to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's curious is that what he's describing is what's known as Capgras syndrome. It's when a person believes that someone that they loved, a friend or family member, has been replaced. Now, usually it's with an alien, but I wouldn't be surprised that because Lori has such a devout belief that it was replaced by some dark or spirit or dark being or something like that. So at those points, yeah, being the loved one, being the friend, family member, you can absolutely feel just helpless to do anything about it.
Joel and Carmela, this is the tragedy of it all, is that, Charles knows something is wrong. He's talking to police. He's trying to prevent this whole series of events from happening, but he's unable to do so.
Yeah, Vinny, we had Jim Eggleston, a former FBI agent, out of the Phoenix office, and we spoke to him. He's very tight with a lot of members of the Chandler PD. Is there any potential liability here for that police department? There were cries for help from Charles Vallow, and it seems that they went unanswered. And just when you watch that video in retrospect, you see how chilling, in fact, it really was, because he wound up dead not long after. He was obviously nervous about his situation. And at that point, Lori was starting to go off the deep end. So yeah, it is very, very tragic, but hindsight, as they say, is 20/20, and it's a lot easier, to see it now, obviously, than if you were a Chandler police officer back then. But still, Jim Eggleston with the FBI says, look, we've got to go back. The department does, and they have to look at all of these body cam videos again to see what went wrong, if anything.
Yeah, Carmela, 1 second. Carmela, I want to play something specially for you, okay? Joel, he just asked, let me play this. This is going to be, because I want you to get into the family dynamics here. You've got Alex Cox, Lori Vallow, and Tylee Ryan all speaking to police after Charles is shot and killed. Let's listen.
You love your stuff because your stuff.
Sorry about that, everybody. And yet he was found in the wrong. Charles Vallow. This is so disheartening, this information, because this man is dead and these kids are now dead. It's just alongside Tammy Daybell. This is so disturbing. Lord have mercy.
Charles was following Lori and yelling, and Tylee told him to get back. She took her bat like that and shoved him and took the bat away. And I said, "What are you doing?" And I got between them, and he hit me. And I just went down, and when I got up, he was still yelling. And so I went into the bedroom where I was staying, grabbed my gun, and I came back. Okay. And told him to put the gun down, or the bat down. And he came to me and was saying, what are you going to do? Like that, coming to me with a bat? I said, put it down. He wouldn't. He came at me, so.
I was kind of turned around. And we were all right there in that room, except for the kids had been outside by that time, and I heard the gunshot. Mm-hmm. And so So you heard the shot? Mm-hmm. Did you actually see the shot, or did you just hear it? I had gone around to the kitchen to get away from him and so back around. So I don't know if you went in the house. I didn't, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage. Yeah, so I didn't see the shot. I heard it, and then I came back around and I saw that he was on the ground. Okay. And I was freaking out. Yeah. And so I was just freaking out. I just went into mom mode. I'm like, I've got to go to get JJ to school. I've got to get to the kids. I got to get to the kids. I just kind of stuck the baseball bat out there, and then he just grabbed it and tried to take it. So I held on to the end, and then eventually I fell, and he kind of took it into his hands like he was going to do something with it. So my mom said to go with JJ, and so I ran out the door, and then I kind of just stood there with my little brother. He was in the front seat of the car, and so I just kind of opened the door and just stood there, and he was trying to get out, and I was like, no, we have to stay in. And I was like, oh, I told him, do you want to go in the Jeep? And then he was like, no, and then I realized that my car was blocked in, so I couldn't anyways. I was like, okay, just stay here. And then eventually my mom came out, and then we left from there.
Before we talk about that, take a look.
Well, let me ask you all this before they start the discussion. Do you believe those events? Because that means the child would have had to lie Tylee about the events that happened that day. And she seemed like she was telling the truth. I mean, they all depends on your perception of who said what on that fateful day. But could it be that Charles was upset when he got in that house? He was angry. He hadn't been having any type of relations with his wife, any conversations. He's been trying to reach her mentally, physically. And maybe he walked in, she said something, he said something, and he was angry. Maybe he did grab the bat from Tylee. Maybe he was irate. I mean, I can't say that Charles didn't have a right to be angry because he's trying to level up with his wife and he can't reach her. And maybe something was said to him that pissed him off that day. Maybe he was asking her something and she wouldn't respond, and one thing begat another, and that's when Tylee goes and gets the bat. And do you believe the events that they're repeating in this? Because we do know later it was 40 minutes before they called 911, and Lori did take his phone and went through his phone and saw private conversations. And then we have her brother testifying to a detective that he knew that Lori went through the phone because of conversations his mother had repeated with him and his dad. And he knew that nobody knew that conversation but him and Charles. Lori had went through that phone. So while this man is on the ground dead or dying, she's going through his cell phone, looking at his private conversations. Why? That's not behavior of somebody that cares for their spouse. And as you hear her saying, I was just trying to get the kid to school. I was trying to get the kid to school. That was my focus, my kids. But yet it took you 40 minutes before you dialed 911. And by then, 40 minutes of a dead person, they're stiffening up. This is just a very sad, pathetic story.
Talk about that. Take a look. The clock has stopped. Not going to need this tonight, folks. Not going to need this tonight. I can put it away. I'll have it with me tomorrow. The jury apparently has left for the day. So they put in 4 hours of work tonight. Sometimes they just need to sleep on it. So make sure you're watching first thing in the morning. In the meantime, let's get back to our guests. Carmela Waldman. That is not Joel's sister, by the way. That's Joel's mom, believe it or not, folks. So Carmela, let me ask you. Great to see you. This whole incident, you've got Charles is shot and killed by his brother-in-law, and nothing happens. And if something had happened here, everything else that happened would have been prevented. It's just so tragic.
Exactly.
But what is also very tragic, how clever Lori was, because during this interview with the police, I don't know if I heard it right, but she says she was worried about the children. And that kind of surprised me because the way she worried about the children is how to get rid of the children. And I was surprised that her husband, her fourth husband, knew that he was even given a new name of a zombie, and he wasn't even considered himself anymore. So the family dynamics are so horrible that you don't even analyze them anymore.
Erica Morse, you know, if and I don't know what each side knew, but if the police had put this all together, you know, Charles speaking out about threats to his life and then he ends up shot. If they could have put it all together more quickly. This was in July. It's months before the children are dead. Tammy is dead.
Well, sure. If they could have connected the dots earlier, then people could have been saved. I mean, we could have had 5 people saved. It's frustrating because we had police not communicating with one another. We had police reports kind of all over the place. And unfortunately, when police officers don't dig deep enough and maybe get a little bit cynical, when the reporting victim is a male and they're not taken seriously, that their life is in danger. You know, I have clients that take issue with the fact that police officers are out there practicing law without a license, essentially. Was this preventable? Yes, I firmly believe it does, and I believe there's liability to be looked into.
All right, everybody, that's Court TV. The end of that segment. So do you believe the police department in Arizona is liable for the death of Charles? That they didn't take Charles serious because he's a man. A lot of people don't believe that women can become violent, abusive, fight, be the instigator into fights and things, or set their husband up to be murdered by the brother. But I do believe this could have been preventable. But I also know that sometimes things were going to happen no matter what. It's just depending on the response from the person. Now, as I said, had he taken his child and cut Lori off, he may have been able to preserve his own life and JJ's life, but it doesn't mean that possibly Tolly wouldn't have ended up still murdered, because Lori would have still been the custodian of her. So that still would have been a problem, because 9 times out of 10, he wouldn't have fought for custody of her. But perhaps he and JJ could still be alive had he left her alone and stopped going back and forth with her about religion and she's crazy, she's this. Most people would have said, well, okay, you see she's crazy. She's calling you a different name. She's telling you she's a zombie. She's that you're a zombie. She's telling you that you're this guy, this foreign guy. She's married to this guy from the Book of Mormon, whatever. Leave her alone. She's not making any sense. So why are you still trying to reason with her? Because at some point, that's really all you're doing is you're bartering with the devil. And that's what he was doing. And he was just giving her and Chad and the brother and all these other entities, Denise and Zulema, all them, he was just giving them enough time to concoct their murders. And that's what happened. He was just bartering with her to keep calling Chad and, hey, what's the light scale looking like? What's the dark scale looking like? Whether she believed this ideology or not, whether Chad believed it or not, they still killed these people. And there's no way in my right mind, I believe God would tell you to murder your family so you can go out here and do his work. Why would God want you to murder your children in exchange for doing good deeds for him? We know that he's a jealous God, and he has asked people in the Bible to go on certain missions and leave their families. But I don't remember him saying, kill your family to go do my work. So that was blasphemous in saying, I'm doing God's work. He spoke to me. I spoke to Jesus. He said, I got to kill these kids, kill my husband, kill my wife. But as someone said to her, I think it was the other Melanie Gibb, well, I haven't heard from Jesus and I haven't heard him talk to you. So I don't know what he told you in the temple. Because he never spoke to Lori. That's the point. And he never spoke to Chad. And he never spoke to Alex. He never spoke to Melanie P. And I still believe she needs to be rung up for charges as well. Because she had knowledge that these people were going to be killed. Because she's the one that had Alex shoot at Brandon. And possibly she was going to harm her own children. because now information has come out that she too was trying to get to her kids and had got the police. The police was calling her. She was on the in-laws' property, poking around, I guess, trying to get at the children. So it's no telling what she would have done had she got a hold of her kids. See, this is what people need to focus on. And we also need to find out if indeed she still has access to her children. Because I'm sure, hey, somebody's got enough sense, Brandon, to say, hey, I'm getting a restraining order and making sure the judge knows all of this information. She can't get my children, see my kids, because I wouldn't give her rights to see any children, Melanie P. Hell no. Hell no. I wouldn't even give her supervised visits because we don't know what her thought process is right now. And that guy, Ian, that's still married to her, you're crazy to even be married to her, knowing they all constructed that shooting of Brandon in that driveway. Same way they did Tammy Daybell. Don't you see the similarities? And if you can talk one into doing it and now they're dead, you could easily go whisper that same junk to somebody else's ear. And before you know it, somebody else ends up dead. While these cohorts are incarcerated. Because as somebody said, who's to say that these people still don't believe in this jacked up theory of the 144,000 gathering of souls and this and that? Who's to say some new fool don't come along and start spewing that venom out? Because you got to think, if you can get 4 or 5 or 6, next time it's 20 or 30. And I'm going to bring you commentary to the defense talking about that, the gathering. And that Lori has decided to turn on Chad Daybell in the defense's closing arguments. Thank you for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $sign Big Angie, 129 Cash App. Stickers and chat to welcome during the live stream. This is the information that we have been waiting on. Lori did not testify on her own behalf. Chad Daybell wasn't brought in to testify against Lori in this trial. 12 members of the jury are deliberating her fate. 4 hours or so. Why didn't they come back with a verdict? Do they believe she conspired to kill these people, children? Or she's just a mentally ill lady who was misled by a Jesus wannabe? 23 ABC News. No, not 23. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Got the wrong source. Hold on one second, you guys. Got so many stories running. The Independent UK is the source. Thank you. Lori Vallow turns on nutty Chad Daybell in final bid to avoid murder conviction. 1 year after meeting Chad, 4 people are dead, said the defense attorney. Lori Vallow turned on her lover, fellow COPE member and alleged accomplice, Chad Daybell, in a dramatic closing statement where she made a final bid to avoid life in prison for the murder of her 2 children and Mr. Daybell's first wife. In Ada County Court in Boise, Idaho on Thursday, Ms. Vallow's attorney, Jim Archibald, sought to paint her as a hardworking good mom whose life suddenly changed when she met Mr. Daybell. 1 year after meeting Chad, 4 people are dead, said Mr. Archibald. Who is Lori Vallow? What happened? Where did it happen? When did it happen? Why did it happen? He asked. That's what you've been asked to figure out. Mr. Archibald walked jurors through Ms. Vallow's backstory of how she grew up in California and got married straight out of high school. Ms. Vallow married 3 times in total before marrying 4th husband Charles Vallow. The couple adopted J.J. Vallow, 7, and they lived together with Ms. Vallow's daughter, Tylee Ryan, 16. Mr. Archibald said that the Vallows were a good fit for J.J., who had autism, and they loved and cared for him, quote unquote. Then the story about Lori Vallow changes dramatically in October 2018, he said. That month, Ms. Vallow met Mr. Daybell in person for the first time at a religious conference while they were both married. Prosecutors say their love affair, cult beliefs, and murderous plans all grew from there. First, Charles was shot dead by her brother, Alex Cox, in Arizona, July 2019, and Ms. Vallow then moved with JJ and Tylee to Rexburg, Idaho, where Mr. Daybell lived. JJ and Tylee were last seen alive in September 2019, and for months, Ms. Vallow refused to reveal their whereabouts. 1 month later, Tammy died suddenly, age 49, and Ms. Vallow and Mr. Daybell flew to Hawaii and married on a beach. June 2020, JJ and Tylee's remains were discovered buried in Mr. Daybell's backyard. JJ died by asphyxiation with multiple layers of plastic bags wrapped around the little boy's head and duct tape over his mouth. Tylee's cause of death was impossible to determine because her remains were so badly burned and mutilated, with body parts and bones found scattered in the ground on the Daybell property. Now, Miss Vallow is facing life in prison on charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and grand theft over the deaths of JJ and Tylee, as well as conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the death of Tammy. She is facing charges over Charles' murder separately in Arizona. In closing arguments on Thursday, Ms. Vallow's defense attorney argued that everything changed when Ms. Vallow met Mr. Daybell. From then on, he claims that Ms. Vallow was under the control of the doomsday author, under the spell of the craziness of his cult police. Why can't people escape religious leaders? Why can't Lori escape and get back to her good mom life, he asks. Lori is not a leader in Chad's new church, the Church of the Fireborn. Lori so wants to testify of Jesus. She wants to tell the world how much she loves Jesus. She wants to tell you she personally met him on more than one occasion. Mr. Archibald asked the jury to question whether Ms. Vallow is a leader or a follower. But is Lori a leader or a follower of Chad? She so wants to be a leader, but she's not leading anyone, he said. She's following Chad. She thinks Chad is following Jesus, but he's not. He's unfortunately being led by the storm, not the first guy to be led by the storm. And I think you know what the storm is. That has been a word used for Chad Daybell's private part. Go figure. Mr. Archibald said that while people may question how can someone have that much control over you, reason and common sense go out the window sometimes when religious principles are involved. He pointed to testimony from witnesses who described Ms. Vallow as a good mother prior to meeting Mr. Daybell. The defense attorney went on to blame the murders of Tylee and JJ squarely on Mr. Daybell and Ms. Vallow's brother, Alex Cox. He argued that while it is undeniable that JJ and Tylee were murdered, there was no evidence placing the 49-year-old mother of three at their murders or on Daybell's property when they were buried there. There is also no mention of murders in the 15,000 texts of evidence, he said. Look for the lack of evidence of who's doing what, he said. By contrast, he pointed to cell phone data placing Cox in Mr. Daybell's yard on the day that JJ was buried there, and Mr. Daybell's actions, looking over his shoulder and attempting to flee the scene when investigators began digging up the yard months later. Chad knew what was in his backyard, said the defense attorney. Mr. Archibald also dismissed the significance of Miss Vallow's hair being found on duct tape used to wrap a plastic bag around JJ's head. Rather than being a smoking gun, he claimed that this would be expected when JJ's pajamas and clothes were also in the bag. I would hope all of you who are mothers, I hope your hair is somewhere on your kids' pajamas, socks, or blanket, he said. He also argued that there was no evidence to show that Miss Vallow was involved in planning any of the murders, pointing instead to steps such as hiring a babysitter, listing JJ and Tylee on her rental application for her home in Idaho, and a lack of life insurance purchase for the children. Lori didn't have a plan. The state wants you to think that this was Lori's plan to kill her kids, he said. The defense attorney also questioned whether Mr. Daybell's wife Tammy was even murdered or whether she did in fact die of natural causes as initially thought. In an attempt to pick holes in the prosecution's argument that she was driven by money, sex, and power to kill her children and Mr. Daybell's first wife, Mr. Archibald made numerous scathing digs at Mr. Daybell, calling him nutty and scoffing at Mr. Daybell's attractiveness, the lack of money he could offer Miss Vallow in their new life, and the couple's doomsday beliefs that lie at the heart of the case. In terms of financial motive, he compared Charles's salary of $400,000 to $500,000 a year to Mr. Daybell's $30,000 as the doomsday author can't sell enough stupid books about the end of the world, quote unquote. In terms of power, he pointed out that between them, Miss Vallow and Mr. Daybell managed to only recruit around 6 of the 144,000 they believe they were gathering for the second coming. At the rate of 6 people a year, that will take Chad 24,000 years to get this army assembled. The math is ridiculous, he said. Mr. Archibald went on to compare Mr. Daybell's appearance to Charles' appearance, saying it wasn't about sex, but was about Miss Vallow buying into his religious claims. She's reading his books during a hard time in her life, and this guy is telling her she's a goddess. And by the way, we've already been married in previous lives, so it's not really cheating, and we were best friends with Jesus, and Jesus approves, so everything is okay, he said. That's quite the pickup line by Chad to Lori, and it worked. Pretty scary that the pickup line from Chad to Lori worked. If convicted, Miss Vallow faces life in prison. Mr. Daybell is also charged over the murders, but is due to stand trial separately at a later date. Cox, meanwhile, died before he could face charges. On the 11th of December, 2019, Cox died suddenly at the age of 51. His death was also ruled natural causes with indications of a blood clot wedged in the arteries of his lungs. However, the overdose drug Narcan was also found in his system. Very interesting. I did not know that. Miss Vallow is also facing charges in Arizona of conspiring with Cox to murder her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. If you need verification for this information, independent.co.uk is the source. Wow, that's a lot. So the defense has decided in closing arguments to throw Chad Daybell and Alex Cox as the culprits in the murders of the children and Tammy. Thousands of texts, but yet nothing in there definitively saying, hey, let's kill the kids. Well, Mr. Archibald, people usually have sense enough to know not to text directly their plans to murder people. So they talk in code and talk around. They gave themselves aliases. She gave him an alias the second day after meeting him. So she was already hook, line, and sinker day 2 from meeting Chad Daybell, because she put his name in her phone as a bishop or source. They talked in circles leading up to the deaths of the children, in her asking about the darkness of the kids and the percentage. The time was winding down to the due date of murdering these kids. And I think anybody could use deduction in reading those text messages, sir. And the fact that Tammy didn't have an autopsy after death, rushing her off to be put into a funeral home and then slashed the ground in a whole nother city, making excuses about the weather, that was a sign she was murdered. And the fact that we have licensed people to do autopsies, to give a rendering, and they gave the rendering asphyxiation, that's their job. And the fact that we now have information that Alex had Narcan in his system. For what? So was he actively using drugs? That he needed this Narcan in his system? Was administered when? Maybe he did have a heart problem. Maybe he had a heart drug problem and a little boost to get him 6 feet under. Because don't you find it strange, the orchestrator of these deaths alongside Chad and Lori is now dead. And what's the old saying? A dead man tells no tales. Exactly. Too many people conspiring, too many mouths that can open and tell the truth. And the fact that he told Zalima he believes he'll be the fall guy, that should have told Zalima he helped murder these people. She should have put 2 and 2 together. And I won't doubt that he told her the whole truth and she just didn't tell that. Yeah, he confessed that he helped kill all these people. Because then she knew she would be liable for having knowledge that her husband killed his niece, nephew, and tried to kill Brandon and aided in the death of Tammy Daybell. Hell no, I ain't gonna tell that part. But I believe Zalima knows a lot. And I believe Melanie P knows a lot. And whether we believe that Lori is mentally ill, disturbed, has a diagnosis, legitimate, or she's just plain evil, at some point she has knowledge of right and wrong. Because there's too much conspiring to just say, oh, she's mentally disturbed. She believed all this rhetoric. She already had jacked up ideologies before she met Chad. It has been said in testimony, she believed in past lives, and she had that thought process before meeting Chad Daybell, before the mentioning of zombies and darkness and percentages. But it just didn't help. And possibly that's what Chad was looking for. He was looking for a gullible person to spin his jacked up ideologies and fictional thoughts to, and he found it in her. And I think he had been doing this beforehand, because a lot of people that are sociopaths, psychopaths, they didn't wake up a sociopath, psychopath. They've been in the making. And that's what you have to understand about people who are deranged. They've been doing naughty things. You just don't have a receipt. So he didn't wake up 50 years old trying to gather 144,000. He's been jacked up. It's just you don't have people to testify that he was messed up in the head. But I think he's been possibly flirting, possibly been looking for somebody to play around with his storm, if you get my drift. I won't doubt that he's messed around with other women, perhaps. He's been looking for a Lila, Lily, Lolo, and he found it in Lori. And Lori's been looking for the same. And as this defense attorney says, at a time in her life that was difficult. Well, what was going on in her life that was so difficult, Mr. Archibald? She was married. Her husband made damn near $500,000 a year. So what problems did she have? Now, we know that people do have problems, but tell us, enlighten us. What were her problems specifically in her life that was so difficult for her to fall under the spell of Chad? And the fact that you said his looks don't compare to Charles, so it was about what he was spinning to her, possibly. Because no, Chad is not a morning star. From the looks of it, previous pictures, he looked like he was a little bit chubby. So what was so special about Chad Daybell? Who knows? But when you have people who are mentally ill, they will gravitate towards other mentally ill people, no matter how they look. And possibly she was searching for something in her life. And I have already said that before in my commentary pertaining to Lori. She's always been looking for something. That's why she has so many husbands. Each man she got with, she figured, okay, it's going to be better this time. It's going to be better this time. So she got with Charles and it wasn't better. And we have Tylee testifying in a recorded video after Charles dies that she really never got along with him as a child. 16 years of age, she said, when I was younger, never really had a relationship. A few times he became violent with her mother. I don't know if she's lying about that. And she's not allowed to tell us if she told the truth to the cops in that interrogation room. Perhaps Charles wasn't the nicest guy that people thought, but nonetheless, he didn't deserve to be murdered, from my understanding of who he allegedly was. And naturally, people have secrets. He may have had dysfunction as well, Charles Vallow. But we do know that Lori was more off-kilt than possibly he was. And as I said, I won't doubt that he possibly was angry that day he went to Lori's house. Who's to say? We don't know, because he's not here to tell us what he actually said when he went in that house. But everybody is in consensus that, okay, he was trying to get the bat from the child fell, blah, blah, blah. Alex felt threatened by him. He goes and get a gun and he shoots him. But the sick part is that he's lying there for 40 minutes before being administered aid. And Lori's rummaging through his phone, which shows that possibly this was a setup. And the fact that the man said it in his own words to his own brother-in-law speaks volumes. Why would a human being say that about their own self? Oh, I believe they're trying to set me up. And then lo and behold, he ends up dead. So you have to decide if it was a setup or not. And that's the next trial Lori will face in the state of Arizona, is in the death of her last husband, Charles Vallow. What will the jury decide? The fate. 4 hours of deliberating and they still didn't bring back a verdict yesterday. Why not? Do they believe this woman conspired to kill her children and Tammy Daybell? Did the state give enough information and evidence to show she was conspiring, talking in circles, not definitively saying, yes, I want my kids dead, but she was talking about them dark, 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 this one dark, everyone's dark, and all the people that were dark ended up dead. Don't you find that interesting? Talking about past lives even before meeting Chad Daybell to show she was unraveling before even meeting Chad. Then she meets him, and all of 2 days, She's putting in aliases in her phone. Chad's number under a different name. So what could he have said in 2 days to have her wrapped up and then start plotting the deaths of her children and her husband? Threatening her husband. You have him saying this to the police on body footage, body cam. Talking about her daughter. Oh, she's been acting this way. Now she's acting nice. As if she's surprised her daughter couldn't have a good day. Almost as if she's looking for a reason to kill her kid. Kill her kids. She talked about the death of JJ and Charles months before. Talking about they're going to be in a car accident. So you see, she was plotting the deaths and saying it out loud. She just wasn't saying deliberately, yeah, to people, yeah, I want them dead. She just said it in a way like, oh, I'm getting a vision that they're going to be dead. But she actually threatened Charles to his face. Hey, I'm sick of you. I want you gone. Police didn't believe him. Now he's dead. Now the son's dead. Now the daughter's dead. And these people died gruesome deaths. How does a 16-year-old get reduced to just a lump of flesh and hair and bone and matter and burned in a bucket? A baby wrapped up, duct tape, mommy's hair wrapped up in the duct tape, on the tape, however it goes, transference of hair, possibly. Or she was there wrapping the boy up. She was there suffocating her own son, the child she's so tired of. How could a woman meet somebody and turn on her own kids in exchange for wanting to be in a relationship with a Teletubby that's not so handsome? Let Mr. Archibald tell it. Because you're right, looks aren't everything. People fall for people every day. They don't look like very much. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so they say. And people have followed others into the lion's den willingly without being coerced. This is why you can't listen to negative talk about people from other people. Because if your mindset is already warped, it won't take much for you to turn on that person. And if you have somebody in your ear sitting up on your shoulder telling you, yeah, he ain't no good, she ain't no good, they're this, they're that, you will fall into the abyss if you're not careful. And that is what happened with Lily. Perhaps, as I said, Lily was not happy with Charles. She met Chad. Chad was not happy with Tammy, and he was looking for someone to ride the ride of this 144,000 zombie apocalyptic bullshit, and she fell for it because she was looking for something, and he was looking for a way out. See, for all we know, they both were looking for a way out of their marriage. They were troubled, had troubled marriages. They started listening to each other with this past lives BS and making up of who's married to whom years ago in the Bible, blah, 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 or Book of Mormon, however it goes. And here comes the plotting of deaths. See, one thing begets another. Because you know the old saying, seek and ye shall find. You're out looking for trouble, that's what you're going to find. You're looking in dresser drawers, you're going to find something that you didn't want to find, but you were looking, so maybe you did want to find it. You're looking in pocketbooks, pockets for indiscretions from your lover, your spouse, and voila, you find a phone number. See, Lori has been searching her entire life. That's possibly why she married young, high school. Marriage after marriage after marriage after marriage, and divorce, 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 divorce. Now she's married to somebody who has helped kill her kids with her consent and participation. No doubt. So she didn't have to directly say it in a text, Mr. Archibald, because that would be foolish of her to say, hey, what time are we going to kill my kids? Hey, I'm going to get my brother to kill my husband. Come on now. And surely he's not going to say, yeah, by Thursday, I want her dead. But he did say it, did he not? When they were talking about the children going off to school and being graduating, he said she should be gone by then. Gone by when? And who was she he was referencing? He was talking about Tammy. That's clear cut. got a lot to do with this and this. We got a lot going on, going to the graduations, blah, blah, blah. She should be gone by then. He was letting you know, I will have her dead by this such and such time. She texting him about the dark percentages of her children. What is it looking like right now? Oh, I haven't gotten to that yet, says Chad. Because they talked in riddles, giving each other aliases. He's spinning a story from his alleged novels that's both factual, just a different change in name. Things that they were actually doing, he's putting it in a book, in a novel, don't you see? Life imitating art, art imitating life. And that's what happens in a lot of screenplays and books. People are actually talking about real people. They just changed the damn names. And that's what was happening here with Mr. Daybell and his fictional writing and storytelling to Lori through text messages. And whether he was nice looking, fat, short, tall, bald, she found something in him, and that's the point. And he found something in her. But the gist of the story is the obvious. Both of them were stupid, because if each can conspire to kill their spouses, who's to say that they won't turn on each other down the road? He decides to tire of Lori. She decides to tire of him, considering she's got a lot of husbands under her belt. Chad would possibly end up dead. And the fact that he compares Charles's looks and income versus Chad's, well, obviously she didn't care about Chad not making a lot of money selling books. She didn't care that he didn't look like her husband. She found something in him. And you hear her mother saying to ABC News a while ago, she's always been trying to have a close relationship with God. She's always been in the church. So maybe this Mormon life was not best suited for Lori Vallow Daybell. That somehow in her searching for God and a closer relationship with Jesus, she got unhinged. She became unhinged. Because if she was already mentally ill, it wouldn't have taken much. She's searching for Jesus. She's searching for a way out, a better life. But instead, she becomes distorted in her religious beliefs versus what is reality, past lives, and being married to somebody from the Book of Mormon, when we already know she was never married to anybody in the Book of Mormon. She was never married to Chad Daybell in a past life. You only have one life, and nobody's ever come back to prove that they lived before. So therefore, that's just a myth or your own ideology. So you see, Lori was distorted before meeting Chad. She just met somebody who could help spin more of a unhinged mindset, because obviously he wasn't dealing with a full deck himself. So each were searching for something when they crossed each other's path. And then an affair began to brew. And then the deaths of their loved ones, allegedly loved ones, were plotted, sadly. And this is a very sad story, because there are more Chad Daybells and Lori Daybells out here. There are more Alex Cox, Zulimas, and Melanie Pease out here. More Melanie Gibbs who follow in behind people knowing that something's not right, knowing you don't really agree with what they're saying, but you just don't have the guts to just cut them off. You keep dealing with them and talking to them. And this is how you get yourself wrapped up with people and get yourself in trouble, to where you end up having to go to court to testify because you didn't cut your ties with the people. And this happens to a lot of us. We find something in these people that we like, but then there's other things in them that we do not like, but we don't let it override the judgment to leave them alone. So we keep riding the ride and dealing with them until the bag falls out. And sadly, you can follow people, as I said, into the abyss and there's no point of return. You can't crawl your way out of the lion's mouth. You can't surface to the top of the water. And this is why you have to know when to fold. And Charles didn't fold. Alex didn't fold. He rode the ride with these jacked up ideologies. Melanie P. rode the ride. And even Melanie Gibb kept dealing with her when she saw signs that she wasn't right and talking zombie talk and not making any sense. Still kept being friends with her. You knew that wasn't the religion that you grew up and believed from the book. Then why would you keep indulging in conversating with somebody that's allegedly supposed to be a Christian woman? You should have told her to her face. I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't the doctrine that's being taught. And I don't want to keep discussing anything about dark, light. I don't want to keep hearing negative things about your son, your daughter, your husband, this and that. I'm not with any of this. She should have called Charles and told him, I'm not trying to get in your marriage, but something's going on with your wife and she's becoming detached from reality. And if they were going to the temple together at church, she should have went to an elder and told him, hey, there's something going on with this chick. I don't know what's going on with her, but she needs some type of help. And maybe had somebody from the church talk to Lori, they could have put some sense into her to say, hey, you're spinning these ideologies to people. You know this doesn't make any sense and it's not right. And it has nothing to do with our faith. Maybe she could have snapped out of it. But instead, you all were indulging her. Even if you didn't argue with her about her beliefs, so long as you riding the ride and talking and dealing with her, she thinks you're in cahoots to what she's talking about. And that's what people don't understand. We get it. A lot of times you don't want to combat with people. You don't want to argue with people. But when you say nothing, they think you're in agreement with them. In no way am I going to be in agreement with you talking negatively about your husband and son being dead. You got a vision they died in a car crash. You're talking about zombies. And I don't believe in zombies. And I don't believe it's in the doctrine. Then you're starting to talk about light and dark scales, but I don't believe in that either. That's when you should cut your losses. Tell the people how you feel. Hey, I ain't in agreement with this stuff you're spinning. If you continue to talk about this stuff, we can't talk anymore. So instead of going for the jugular in the beginning when you started seeing that heifer was unraveling, you now have to go to court and testify to all the conversations you've had with this dizzy ass broad. And some of you still believe Melanie Gibb is a part of the plot to kill these people. I don't think that she was. I think she's like a lot of people. She just didn't want to rock the boat. But at the end, when the police started coming around asking about that boy, did she have him? Then she knew what time of day it was. That something's not right. Why are the police involved now? Where are her children? Why hasn't she produced her children? And why is she lying on me? And I think she realized that when she lied for Lori. But see, before you go spend a lie for somebody, you should be asking that person, well, why are people concerned about your son? And why are you asking me to tell people that he was staying with me? Because logically, you should have known something wasn't right, Melanie, when she asked you to say that JJ was staying with you. You may not have known all her personal business and her family dynamic, but she had to have told you something to make you think his life was in danger for you to lie and say he was staying with you. But when you realized it was serious, you decided to fold and tell the truth, which was the right thing to do. And aren't you glad you didn't continue to follow in behind Lori? Because I think in the end, she would have turned on you like she allegedly turned on Miss Audrey. And we have to decide if we believe Miss Audrey's testimony that Lori threatened to kill her. Some people will say, I don't really care if she did or not. She's already killed these other people. What's the difference if the lady's telling the truth or not? Maybe it doesn't matter. But it would matter to the person who's been threatened and they now know that this lady has killed these other kids and spouses. It would matter. Because now you know what she's capable of. And the brother said that, Mr. Adam. You don't agree with Lori? She cuts you off. And sadly, that's meant literally, now that we know that these people are dead. So imagine they started cutting off people who were hanging around them, and the people started to voice their opinions. I don't believe what you're saying, and this is BS, blah, blah, blah. The next thing you know, they're having a heart attack. They're choking under a plastic bag. Because some have asked that question as of late. Who was next on the chopping block? Who were they going to kill? Because you're killing everybody in your inner circle, such as your children, your spouses. So where are you going to start killing your friends, associates, the neighbors? Who was next? Who else was going to have a dark entity? Zombie personality turned into a zombie. See, with people like this, you could not be friends with them because they are warped inside of their head. And the sad part of this story is that these two beings never knew each other, met at a religious conference, and became evenly yoked in foolishness and the macabre. And then they spew that venom to other demented spirits, which was Melanie P. and Alex. And they jumped on board with conspiring to kill other people and possibly kill Melanie's children. Do you see how sad this is? And although Mr. Archibald says it would have taken Chad 24 years to gather up 144,000, he didn't find but 6. 6 is too many. How about that, Mr. Archibald? If you can find 6 people to conspire in the murders of people, you found 6 too many. So we definitely wouldn't need under 144,000 thinking the same and acting the same. How about that? Because you got to remember, Miss Melanie Gibb testified that, not Melanie, but the other friend testified that Lori asked her to leave her family, leave her children with her husband. So imagine if that woman foolishly deserted her children or decided to listen at this garbage and conspired to kill her children and murdered them. So you see, Mr. Archibald, 6, 7, 8, 10 is too many to believe in zombies and past lives and unicorns and killing kids and spouses. 6 is way too many. And that's the sad thing about the occult. If you can get you 5, 6 to believe in what you're saying, that's 5 or 6 too many. 30, 40, too many. And as with Jim Jones, there were hundreds of people who drank the Kool-Aid. So what's the difference between 300 or 400 versus 144,000? Death is death. Believing and conspiring in death is bad, with one conspiring and acting it out. And once you go find another participant, all bets are off. I want to thank you for your time. This was a 3-part live pertaining to John Bassett. A jury has been set in his trial here in Knoxville, Tennessee, in the murder of Deshina Kyle. I will bring you an update later on this evening or Saturday pertaining to what happened in court, what will happen in court Friday. In the West trial, they will resume on Tuesday. The defense and the state has rested. You're entitled to believe that these people are guilty or innocent in killing their children. Their bodies have never been discovered. And Lori Vallow Daybell, the jury is currently deliberating her fate. No matter what happens in court, in the deliberations or the verdict, she still faces a murder charge for her last husband, Charles Vallow, in Arizona. Thank you for following this network. content. I will post a movie of the weekend for you all to indulge in. And my suggestion would be Mind Cage, now playing on Tubi for your weekend delights. For some of you who love true crime and the macabre, this is a fictional tale pertaining to a serial killer killing women in, I believe it's Arkansas or somewhere in the South. But that's my movie suggestion for the weekend, Mind Cage, starring Martin Lawrence. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Big Angie, 129 Cash App, stickers and chats are welcome during my live streams. Thank you for following the content. I will try to bring you more stimulating conversation and subject matters to this network. And know that this is not a true crime network, but I have discussed a lot of true crime stories. But after these trials end, I would like to divulge in other subject matters that are worth discussing. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful weekend. Please be safe. If you see something, say something. Be a part of the solution and not the problem. Mind the children. Justice for Dashina Kyle. Justice for Tylee, JJ, Tammy, and Charles. And justice for the West Boys. You have been listening to The Vault. Exhale.